Hi, I'm Cecilia, and today I'm going to show you how to instantly read music without using the old mnemonic sayings like, every good boy does fine, which you've probably heard before. That method of finding notes seems quick in the beginning, but in the long run, it's really slow because you have to go through the saying every time for every note, and doing that over and over is slow and tedious. It's much faster if you can instantly recognize the note by its placement on the staff. So I'll show you a quicker method that will make you a really fast sight reader once you get it down. I've drawn the lines of the music staff here, and each one of these lines and spaces represents a key or note on the piano. If I turn the page like this, it's basically a shrunk down version of the keyboard. So again, every line and space represents a white key on the keyboard. This large space in the middle fits 3 notes. One that is on an invisible line down the middle, and one in each of the spaces above and below the line. This invisible line in the middle becomes visible only when there is a note being played on it, and that note is middle C. We call it middle C because it's the C key that is closest to the middle of the piano keyboard, and it divides the upper and lower half of the keyboard and the music staff. This upper staff is called the treble or G clef, and is where all the notes above middle C are found. For the most part, you'll be playing these notes with your right hand. The staff below middle C is called the bass or F clef, and it is where all the notes below middle C are found. Again, for the most part, you will play these notes with your left hand. This treble clef is also known as the G clef because it makes this little circle around the G line. Signifying this line is the G note line. So remember, the second line from the bottom of the staff is the G line, and any note on it is the G above middle C. Now the bass clef is also known as the F clef because not only does it kind of look like an F, it has 2 dots above and below the F line, and any note on that line is the F below middle C. Practice memorizing these 2 specific lines. The second line up in the upper staff is the G line, and the second line down in the lower staff is the F line. When you're first learning to read music, it can be helpful to take a highlighter and color these 2 lines on your music for reference points. Okay, next note to learn is the C's above and below middle C. The C above middle C is on the space just below the top space of the treble staff. The C below middle C is on the space just above the bottom space of the bass staff. As you can see, these high and low C's are mirror image from each other, with the high C being the second space from the top and the low C being on the second space from the bottom. Next up, let's learn the top and bottom line notes. The very top line is an F, and I remember that by thinking fly to the top, F for fly. The very bottom line is the G, and I remember this by thinking this line is the ground since it is on the very bottom, G for ground. Okay, we only had 2 more notes to memorize. The very bottom line of the treble staff is the E note. And if you've seen my first tutorial, you'll know I call the E note the elephant note because E for elephant. Now, since elephants are heavy, it's sitting on the bottom line of the staff because it's just too big to climb up any higher. So bottom line of the treble staff is E for elephant. Last one, let's learn the top line of the bass clef. This line is the A note, and to remember that, I think A for apple, and visualize an apple tree growing up from the ground. Remember, this bottom line is G for ground, and the top line is A for the apple that's growing on the very top of the tree, or music staff in this case. Once you memorize these specific lines and spaces, it's really easy to find the notes directly above and below them. For example, if I know this is the G line, I can quickly identify the note on the space above it as the note above G on the keyboard, which is an A. If I see a note on a space below G, I recognize it as the note below G on the keyboard, which is an F. It's really important to be visualizing the piano keyboard, whether in your head or even looking directly at the piano, so that you can start understanding how the notes on the page translates to the notes on the keyboard. For the high C space, the line directly above it is the note directly above high C on the keyboard, which is D. And the line directly below the high C space is the note below C on the keyboard, which is B. Let's keep doing that to all the notes we have memorized. The top line is F for fly to the top, and so the note on the space above it is the note above F, which is a G. The space below is the note below F, which is an E. Coming back down to the bottom line of the treble staff, we have E for elephant, and so the note on the space above would be F, and the space below would be D. Can you see how you can now find any note by only memorizing a few key anchor notes, as I call them? Okay, all we have to do now is the same thing to the lower staff. So remember, second line down between the dots is F line for F clef. The note in the space above is the note above F, which is G. And the note in the space below F is E. Now the low C note is the second space from the bottom, so the line above it would be the D note. And the line below the C space is the B line. Moving down to the ground, G, the space above would be A, and the space below would be F. Last one, back to the top line of the apple tree, A. So the space above would be B, and the space below would be G. And that's every note on the staff. Of course, there are more notes on the piano that go above and below the staff, but you don't need to worry about those right now. This is a lot of information, so don't get overwhelmed. Just practice memorizing a couple of these anchor notes at a time, and use any sheet music you have to practice finding and playing them on the piano. Remember, you're going to use your right hand to play the notes in the upper treble or G clef staff, and the left hand for the lower bass or F clef staff. Do this every day for just a few minutes, and you'll see yourself finding these notes quicker and quicker until it just becomes instantaneous.